In today's video, I'm going to show you some quick and easy tips for transforming your landscape photos in Capture One Pro 21. Alright, so let's dive into Capture One. And I've got 4 photos that we're going to take a look at here. We've got this one, this one, this one, and this one. Out of camera, they're decent, but there's definitely a lot that we can do in Capture One to really make them a little bit more special. Let's start with this one here. So taking at St. Abbs quite early in the morning. It's a nice scene. I love these dramatic stacks. We've got the figure on the cliff here. It's pretty good, but clearly there's a few things going on. So I'm going to switch over into basically our develop module, which is terminology that you might be more familiar with if you use Lightroom. I do use Lightroom a lot, but I also really love using Capture One. It is really, really good. Clearly, we've got some exposure issues, so I'm going to bring that exposure down. Not too much, because I don't want to take away some of the vibrance of that light coming in from the side. This was quite an early morning shot. At what time was this shot? This shot was at 6:30 in the morning, so we've definitely got that morning sunrise light coming in and hitting these rocks from the side, which we're going to emphasize a little bit more as well. I'm going to warm it up quite a bit, somewhere around there. Looks, I think, pretty decent, and I'm going to maybe bring that tint up as well, just so that it doesn't go too green. I want that nice warmth. I think that looks pretty nice. I'm just going to bring the highlights down a touch. You don't want to go too far, because you start to kill a lot of that nice light coming in on the water, but it's just helped bringing that sky under control a little bit. But a lot of my edits that I do to get like the look on my images, rather than just correcting things like exposure, I do in the color editor, where I can really play around with the hues, the saturation, and the lightness of all of the individual colors. So let's start off with our yellow hue, because I think most of the tone we've probably got in here is going to be yellow. And I'm going to turn that from the sort of sickly green that we've got, and I'm going to drag that down much more into the oranges, and immediately you can see kind of what that's done to those colors there. It's really kind of given a much more rich, bold look on those rocks. I'm going to do the same a little bit with the orange, but not to quite the same extent, because if we go that far, it goes pink, and we do not want that kind of pink tone in these rocks. So somewhere around just like -5, just enough to give it that extra little bit of warmth. I might increase that saturation, make those oranges pop out just a little bit more. Not loads. You don't want to go too far. We don't want it to be, in your face, vibrant, just a little bit. And I think I might also lighten it up, which is also going to help those colors stand out a little bit. Now, the way that I tend to work with all my editing, no matter what program I'm in, is just to play around with the sliders. I will grab it and I'll sort of pulse it up and down like this, just to kind of see what it's doing. You can really see every time as I move that where it's affecting in the image. Because you don't always know when you look at the sliders, when you look at these color channels, you don't know necessarily what look it's gonna give you if you drag the slider one way or the other. So move it one way, move it the other, see what it's doing, and then you can decide what actually looks really good for your photo. So for me, I definitely want to increase that lightness. Probably not loads, just around there, I think looks fine. The greens, there's definitely patches of green in here, and it doesn't really balance. It kind of stands out now, so I'm going to drag that down and make that more of a yellow orangey tone, which really fits with the other tones on the rock. We've got this gorgeous like summery vibe going on. I think I might also just decrease that saturation slightly, which is kind of taking out a bit of that color cast that we had on the rock. And I think I'm going to maybe increase the highlights a little bit, the lightness of that color. Again, it's kind of bringing out some of the detail on that rock, and you can see already the difference that this is making overall. Let's have a look at that aqua. Now, I'm not going to touch the hue on the aqua, because what I really want is a nice sort of cyany aqua tone out of our water. And if we take the aqua channel to the left, it goes green, and to the right, it goes to like a royal blue. So actually leaving it right bang in the middle is exactly where we want it. But I am going to increase that saturation to really make that color stand out a bit more. And I may even darken it down, because when you darken a color, it gets more saturated. And as I bring this down, look how much more sort of like bold and vivid the ocean looks. There's a real like rich tone in there, which I like a lot. But we're going to balance that out with the blue channel as well, because now there is like this sort of purpley fringing, and that's coming from the white balance of the blue. If we bring this down, you can see now, it might be very subtle. I'm not sure you'll even be able to tell on YouTube. Let's just zoom in a little bit. Particularly around here, pay attention to this color. So if we go one way, look how it changes from purple. And then it suddenly, once we hit this point, it blends with the rest of the ocean. We've now got an even tone. In fact, if we pull it down to about here, we've just now got one beautiful, rich, emerald tone on that water, which is exactly what we want. Maybe we could lift that lightness of the blue a little bit as well, which looks good. Let's bring that back to fit. So straight away, just by using this color editor, we've got these gorgeous tones overall. I think that's looking really good. I'm worried there might be a little bit of magenta in there. And sometimes you'll get that kind of purpley hue to your blue tones. Actually, I don't think we have, but sometimes it's worth just kind of grabbing that magenta and changing it from a magenta back into a blue. Sometimes if you've got like a bit of a color cast in your sky or in blue water, it can be coming from a magenta. So that's looking so much better already. I'm really pleased with this. Of course, we do need to do some other quick things on this. We need to straighten that horizon. Easily done by just dragging this line across and then letting go, and it will straighten it up. And I'm also want to apply a crop. Now I want to apply a 5x4 crop, because that's going to basically narrow in the top and the bottom of the frame, which is great because we've got kind of a expansive empty blue sky here, and at the bottom we've just got more of an expansive empty grass. All of the main part of the image is a bit more in the middle of the frame. So by applying a crop thoughtfully like that, it kind of just helps you really focus your composition and make sure that you're not just leaving empty patches of space. So we're going to go down to 4x5, and as we just drag that, look how it pings in. And suddenly we've eliminated this dead grass at the bottom, which is adding nothing to our image, and eliminating all of this sort of big empty patch of blue sky. So we're going to bring it to about here. And then click off. And I just think that looks like a much, much better composition because we've just tightened up that frame. The last thing I want to do on this, though, is emphasize this light coming in. And it's going to be very easy to do that because we can work in layers. In Capture One, I'm going to get a new layer. I'm going to use the radial gradient mask. But crucially, I'm going to invert the mask. Because if we apply this now, if you press M, you can see your mask. If we apply this, red is everywhere where the mask is being applied. So whatever changes I make, it's going to apply to the red area and not to the not red area. But for this, we want it to apply within that circle, so it's easy to do. You right click on that adjustment layer and you just go invert mask, and now as you can see, that is where our mask is going to be applied. Perfect. But I want a very, very big circle. So I'm going to drag this out this way. I'm going to drag this out this way. Then we're going to move it almost all the way out of frame, so it's really feathered this effect coming in from here. The reason we're doing that is because that is going to emphasize this sunlight coming in. I'm going to increase that exposure. I'm going to increase that warmth. Look how much difference that has made as we move that around. Like, it is basically moving around that morning sunlight. Doesn't it look great? Such an easy thing that took seconds to do this. We can bring it in about there. You move it around until it makes sense. If you have it too strong, it just looks ridiculous. So it's about very, very subtle touch with this kind of effect. And if we turn that off and on, it's such a small change, but it really, really adds a lovely warmth, a lovely glow to this shot, which I think works just so well. So that's everything I'm going to do on this shot. I mean, how long was that? Mere minutes. And look at our before. Before, it was overexposed. We had these very sickly green tones in the rock. The white balance was all over the place. And now we've given it this gorgeous summery vibe. It's a little bit sort of not quite fantasy, but we've definitely given it a look that's not necessarily the most like natural approach. Probably a little bit Instagrammy, I suppose, if I'm being completely honest. But it's definitely pretty cool, and I think goes to show kind of how quickly you can make these changes in Capture One and give your images a really nice aesthetic. I think that's a huge difference overall. Look at that. Really pleased with that, and that took very, very little time. Okay, let's just turn that tool off, and we'll move on to our next one. So straight away, we've got white balance problems here. It's very kind of sickly green again. So I'm going to warm it up. I'm going to just take that to somewhere around there, I think is looking okay, and going to increase that tint about there. You can keep the before and after on. You can kind of check what we've done. So even just changing that white balance has really done a good job in correcting some of those sort of dreary drab colors. It's clearly too dark as well, so we can increase that by quite a bit. Probably around there. Looks okay. Maybe bring those highlights back down. Let's bring in a sky under control. Somewhere around there. I don't want to go too far. I don't want it to look like it's an HDR image. I think that blue in the sky looks too vivid there. So I just think somewhere in the middle. Maybe increase those shadows a touch. Again, a subtle approach is important. So just take that to plus 10-ish. I'm never exactly accurate with those numbers. Let's give those whites a little bit of a boost. That's going to help bring some contrast out in the scene as well. And then again, we're going to go into our color editor. We're going to play around with these color tones. So I'll start off with the yellows as before. And I think I'm going to drag that down. There's a lot of yellow in this. And if I go too far, then it quickly goes quite pinky like we found with our oranges before. So I'm actually just going to be a bit more subtle with this. Just keep it at minus 6. I might just bring down that saturation a little bit as well. And bring down the lightness, because that's also helping controlling the exposure on the castle, but only a little bit. Just -1, I think, is pretty much all we need. Oranges then. Let's have a look, because we've definitely got some orange going on in here. So what happens if we drag that down? Very quickly goes pink. Okay, so now we know. Now we know that here is much too far. So I think somewhere around here is, again, just giving it that nice richness of tone that we were wanting. Because again, I think this is quite an early morning one. When did I take this? Time. Oh, yeah, 10 to 6 a.m. 5:48. I didn't even know I could get up at 5:48. This is a problem. I like taking landscapes, but I am not an early morning riser. But on this occasion, apparently I was, and we've got this lovely side light coming in as a result, and that is what I'm wanting to emphasize. I'm not trying to recreate light that wasn't there. I am trying to bring back some of those rich morning tones which the camera hadn't captured by itself. Anyway, where was I? I think we could probably take out a little bit of a saturation, though, because it is a slightly overpowering. And maybe what if we bring down that lightness, which we can stand to do because we've taken out some of that saturation, so it's not looking too saturated. I think there's probably quite a lot of green in here as well. Let's go to our green channel, and I'm going to go, oh yeah, there's a lot of green in here. I don't want to go all the way, because then everything becomes this sort of yellowy, orangey, brown sludge. But I just want to kind of take the edge off it being too much of a vivid, vibrant green. Somewhere around -12, I think, is all we need. And I might bring the saturation down just a little bit as well. What about our lightness? Oh yeah, if we lighten it up, we can just see it's bringing out some details on these rocks down here. So I actually quite like that. Not loads, just a little bit. +1. +1 and a bit. What about our blues? Because we've definitely got a bit of a purpley haze to the sky, and I think if we bring that hue down, yeah, I think that's looking quite nice. Leave the saturation where it is, but maybe bring that lightness down a bit. Okay, let's take a look at our before. Bit dark, bit dreary. Yeah, really brought out some nice things here. So I'm liking that. I think I was going to try and straighten it. I think it might be fairly straight already. If you just want to slightly change your rotation, you can right-click and bring up this tool, which will just sort of let you twist it a little bit. I think that is about spot on. And again, we're going to do a crop, and I think I'm going to do the exact same crop, a 4x5, because as we pop it in, we're eliminating a lot of this empty sky and also a lot of this empty sort of pool of water at the bottom. Same principle as before. The focus of this image is right in the middle. We've got the lovely reflection. We've got these rocks, and obviously we've got the cliff and the castle. So that is what we want to really be focusing on. So just focusing that scene really goes a long way. And I think that's looking good. I should maybe raise it up just a little bit. It's a little bit low there. Spot on. I think that's looking great. Okay, I think one of the last things I want to do is use style brushes. This is new for Capture One 21, I think. They are basically shortcuts to doing some dodging and burning and just doing selective edits. You can do any of these edits by just getting a new layer, getting a brush, painting in your brush, and then increasing, say, your contrast or your exposure, or reducing your exposure. Dodging and burning, these are just kind of shortcuts where you can just go to light and contrast, and we're going to go contrast plus, and it's going to give me a brush, and I can literally just start brushing in extra contrast. And I want to do that on those rocks. I want to do a little bit on the castle, and I want to do it quite a bit on this reflection, because I want to really bring that out. The great thing that I love so much about working with Capture One is that you work in layers. And so now that has just applied it onto a new layer, automatically called it Contrast Plus, so you can see exactly what it's doing. Turn that off and on. It's done a good job, but obviously it's far, far too much. That's a really overpowering effect. But unlike working in Lightroom, where you've just got your brushes and you kind of have to go back in and change up those settings, we can just turn down the opacity of the whole layer. We can go all the way and get rid of it completely, and then we can just dial it back in bit by bit until it's at a point where I'm happy. And I think somewhere around 60 is giving it a lot of punch. It's really brought back a lot of that definition in the rock, that separation between the light hitting it here and the shadow here, but it's not overpowering in a way that it was at 100%. So I think that looks a lot better. But I don't think I really want to do anything else. What if we just use a bit of a dodge tool, burn, darken it a little bit, and just try and darken some of these rocks, because we don't need to see these, we just kind of need the suggestion of the rocks. I'm just going to paint in a little bit of darkening here, because the thing is, when you're using dodging and burning, when a person looks at an image, their eyes are most naturally drawn towards the brighter part of the image. And so using things like dodging and burning is basically to encourage the eye to go towards the brighter part. In this case, it is the castle, it's this reflection. And so we want to kind of darken down these extraneous areas in order to help the eye go through the scene and into the subject. And I think that's done a really nice job of that. To be honest, I don't think there's anything else I'd want to do on this. I'm really like how it looks. RB4, sickly green tones, too dark, low contrast. We've brought a lot of beautiful colors back in. We've completely maintained that nice warmth from that morning light. Maybe we could go back to our background. This is the thing. I always say, I think I'm done. And then I always try one more thing. If you're new to my channel, I do that all the time. And it's probably really annoying. We can use the color balance tool. Now, this is also something you'll find in Lightroom. You can add colors specifically to the shadows, to the midtones, and to the highlights. Now, in this case, I think by adding a little bit of warmth, a little bit of orange back into those highlights, it's going to emphasize that morning sunrise light coming in. So I've just turned the hue round into the orange, and we're going to increase the saturation bit by bit. It's a little bit too yellowy. Let's bring it back into that orange. We can move it up and see what it's doing. So without it, I do think things look a little blue. Up here, it's already gone a bit too far. So I think about here looks good. What you can do, if you just want to see what one tool is doing, if you just hover over the reset button and you press Alt and then click, you can just turn off and on that one tool. So we can just take a look at just what that's doing. And it's very subtle, but it's just adding that extra little kiss of warmth. And I think that looks really good. And that is everything I'm going to do for this shot. So the next one, hopefully should be pretty quick, because I don't really think this needs all that much. Let's turn off our before tool. It's a really nice shot. We've got this lovely rich sky. I shot it with a circular polarizer, so I was able to polarize that sky. That's darkened down that blue, giving a lot of separation with the clouds. Again, it was morning light. What time would this have been? 7 a.m. So yeah, still got this nice morning look to the scene. So let's start off. We'll keep this one quick. Exposure up quite a way because it is dark. It's a very, very dark scene. I'm going to increase our warmth a little bit, and I'm going to bring up the tint because it is a little bit on the green side of things. I'm going to straighten our scene again by using the horizon tool. It's going to drag that line there, and I'm going to do, I think, you know what, I think the exact same crop again. I think a 4x5. I like a 4x5 crop when I'm doing vertical images, because straight out of camera they tend to be a little bit too tall and narrow, and I think 4x5 for me always looks much better. You can see that we've lost some of that sort of spare detail in the sky. We've not got rid of all of it. We've still got all of this gorgeous cloud detail, but it's just kind of focused our scene. And of course at the bottom we just got rid of some empty grasses. So I think it's looking good. A lot better. So, but I do want to enhance that sky just a little bit, and so in a new layer, let's just close our style brushes. I'm going to create a new layer, and we're going to use a linear gradient tool. I'm going to drag that in. If we press M, we can see our mask. Again, anywhere that's red is where the mask will be applied. Hide our mask with M. Slightly bring down that exposure. Slightly bring up the contrast, and I'm going to grab the clarity tool, and watch what happens with these clouds as we bring that up. They just get carved out against that blue. Like if I pulse that up and down, all of those fine wispy details really stand out. Okay, I don't want to go all the way. It starts to look a bit weird, a little bit crunchy, but plus 30, plus 35. It's more than I would normally go to. Could even try a little bit of dehaze, I guess. And I think that looks kind of good too. So let's do that. Suddenly we've done a lot of nice stuff with that sky. If we turn that off and on, that blue is more rich. The clouds really stand out. It has really nice impact there. I'm going to do another linear tool, and this time I'm going to bring it in down here at the bottom, feather it out quite a lot, and all I'm going to do with this one is just darken it down. Same reason I was saying before, it's about drawing the eye into the scene. So I want the lighter areas to be where we are looking at. Just by darkening it down adds sort of a quite natural looking vignette, which means that your eye doesn't straight away go to this big patch of bright green at the bottom of the frame. Instead, it looks at the flowers, it looks at the beach, it looks at the rocks and the sky. I think it's good. Turn that off and on. I think it makes a big difference because this was quite overpoweringly bright down here. So that is just kept that under control. That's what our scene looks like. Okay. I don't think there's much more I want to do. Oh, we're still on that layer. Of course, make sure that you are selecting and you're working on your right layer. I don't want to do a lot with the shadows, just give them a little bit of a lift. But let's go down to our colors, and I think I want to, with some, I don't know, I'm not sure I love the color tones of the beach. They could look a little bit more punchy. So again, I'm going to grab that orange, bring it down, and straight away, look, it's gone from being a bit of a sickly tone. Suddenly we've got this lovely warmth in there, and increase the lightness and increase a little bit the saturation. That's all I'm going to do on the beach. In that blue though, I am just going to bring that hue down, because at 0 it's a little bit on the purpley side, so it's just bringing it down, and now it blends really nicely. It goes from this dark blue here through to the light cyan here, blends really nicely. Maybe I'll just darken it down again just to kind of help that effect that we did before, separating the blue from the white clouds. And I think that's it. I really like that. Let's have a look at our before. Yeah, before, greeny tones, the white balance needed fixing, needed to correct those exposures, but we've just done a few things. We've used the tools down here. We've used the tool to enhance the sky, and I think that looks like a really, really nice shot. I'm really pleased with how that looks. So let's move on to our final image, and that's this one here. Long exposure with this water down here. I loved these rocks that someone had placed. I love like the jagged nature of these. They had some really nice pink tones in this that I'm going to bring back. And I love this like saw blade rock here. So there's a lot going on. Before I do anything, I'm just going to straighten it up this time because it's kind of throwing me off a little bit. That's looking good. I'm going to do the crop later because we definitely need to bring in things here, but I want to come back to my crop. Sometimes I do my crop first, sometimes I apply it last. I don't really have one way of working, but so there you go. A little bit of insight into the fact that I'm absolutely ridiculous. So let's start off, and certainly the white balance is far too kind of warm. Everything's gone a bit brown, so I'm going to drag this right down. It's at 6640 now, and I think 5.2. I think this is. It does look very blue. Bear with me. I think it's going to look really good, and just slightly bring down that tint as well because it was a little bit purpley. We definitely need to increase that exposure. It gets very dark. Yeah, about there. 0.63 looks good. We can bring those highlights down just a little bit, just to kind of take the edge off, but I am going to do some work on the sky itself. So that's not a problem. And I think we can probably do with lifting our shadows. There's a lot of shadow, but if we go too far, then very, very quickly it starts to get that sort of HDR render look, and it isn't good. You know, you need that shadow detail in there. Light and shadow is all that an image is, and so if you kill your shadows, you've lost all of that depth, all of that mood. So do be subtle with your shadows. Sometimes it can be really good. Okay, let's go into our color balance because I really want to bring back some of the deep pink tones that we had in these rocks. So I'm going to start with the red channel. And I think I'm just going to drop that down from a red, it's a little bit orangey, back into a pink. As we do, just look, if I pulse that, look what it's doing. It's really bringing back those sort of pinky tones. Something around there looks good. I'm going to increase that saturation by quite a lot because it's really helping those tones come back to life on those rocks. And maybe drop that lightness a little bit as well. Okay, our oranges, same thing, going to bring it down because there's a lot of orange, and as we do, it really moves it back into the pinks. That looks good, somewhere around there. Increase the saturation. What about our brightness? Yeah, let's bring the brightness up. If we bring it down, it's fine. It makes the color a bit more rich. If we bring it up, it allows kind of like the detail on the rock to stand out. I kind of feel that it carves out its form a little bit more. So we could always bring the lightness up even more and counter it by also bringing up the saturation. Obviously, lighten the color, you lose a bit of saturation, so you can bring it back. What about greens? I'm not sure that some of this seaweed might have a lot of green in the channel, so if we just grab that, drag it one way, yeah, I think there is a little bit. So I'm just dragging that into the yellows. I think that looks nice. And if we sort of, pulse up and down that lightness, I'm going to put that lightness at max. I really like what it's doing, some of the detail on the rock around here. Do we have much in the way of blues? Oh yeah, I'll have plenty in the sky. Let's bring down that. It's very purpley at the moment. So I'm going to bring it right down like that. Saturation should come down. It's a little overpoweringly blue. Minus 29, quite a lot. And maybe we can bring down that lightness a little bit too. Already I think this is looking quite nice. So I think in terms of like our color correction and our exposure, I'm really happy with how this is looking, but I want to use some more of these style brushes. And first of all, I'm going to use the burn tool just to darken things down. Similar to before, get kind of just darkening down some of the edges where we don't want the eye to be immediately drawn to. Not loads, and a little bit. I'm going to slightly right click, bring up this tool, make our brush a bit bigger, and just gently paint over the sky. Very, very gently. We're going to do a little bit more work on the sky, but that's just kind of helping take the edge off just a touch. Now we're going to do a dodge. It's going to brighten the scene a little bit, bring our brush size back down. I'm going to do a little bit on these rocks here, a little bit on these. Just very roughly painting in. Because this brush has got such a soft edge, you don't need to be super accurate. But the more that you brush, the more of the effect that you apply. So just doing it once will do very little, but you sort of paint it in, and it allows you to really build up that effect in a way that looks natural. We're going to do one more. This time is with the contrast. I'm going to up that contrast here on these rocks, up it on these. We don't want to do just contrast up everywhere. I want to keep it fairly selective. If you press M to look at our mask, you can see exactly where I've painted so far. Again, we can build it up and up, turn it off, turn it on. Look how much it's really carved out those details. It's looking really, really nice on there. Okay, this sky though, what I want to do, new layer, linear gradient tool, I'm going to drag it down. If you press M, you can see where it's applying, drag it a little bit further, something like that. I'm just going to bring down, close this down, bring down that exposure slightly. Up that clarity. Again, same thing. Look what it's doing. If I pulse this, look at that cloud. Look how much that's like really carving out those cloud details. I think it looks really, really nice. I'm going to go plus 20. But the problem is that it has also applied to these rocks. It's darkening down those tips. We don't want that. Very easy way to solve that in Capture One. If we right click on that layer and we go to Loom Arrange, what this allows us to do is tell Capture One that we don't want the filter to be applied to the very dark areas, or we don't want it being applied to the very light areas. In this case, the rocks are dark. We don't want it to be applied there. So if we just grab, it's already saying display mask, if we grab this here and we drag it up, look, as I do, pay attention to the rocks here and the tips here, it will disappear. Look at that. I'll pulse that up and down. Remember, red is where it's applying. So as we do that, suddenly here, that effect is only being applied to the sky. It's not being applied to the rocks. We don't need to go in and cut out the rocks. We don't need to mask off the area in Photoshop using the pen tool or the lasso tool, anything like that. This is all we do. Apply. And so now if we hide that mask, turn it off and on, it's only applying to the sky. Hasn't touched the rocks. It's brilliant. Love it. So easy. So quick. So let's look at our crop now, because it definitely needs it. And I think that a 1-to-1 crop, a square crop, is going to work really well, because all of the kind of the interesting stuff in this scene is sort of in the middle. Over here, we've just got a big patch of rock and a big patch of rock. And over here, a big dark bit of rock area. And this is kind of, it's neither in the scene nor is it out of the scene. So I kind of feel like I want to make a decision here. And I think a 1-to-1, let's just bring that in. It's just really focused that scene. We've got rid of this sort of bit of house here, and we've still kept in these rocks. We've kept in these amazing lines. We've kept in these jagged pink ones, and of course this saw blade rock and those cool clouds. So for me, it really makes sense as a 1-to-1 image. So really play around with your aspect ratios, play around with your crops, and see whether you can take, hopefully, what is in camera a good composition already. See if you can refine it further. You cannot save a terrible composition with a crop. If you've taken a photo of a church and you've cut off its spire, no amount of cropping is going to save that, but you can definitely refine a good crop further with the crop tool. So yeah, I think that's looking pretty nice. I'm quite pleased with that. Let's go down to our color balance a little bit. I feel that we could maybe put a little bit of nice blues in our shadow. Oh, I see what I'm doing. I'm on the wrong layer again. Let's go back to our background. Here we go. In our shadows, we can pop in a little bit of blue. Not too much, just a little, something like that. And what if we also put a bit of warmth in our highlights? Just a very small amount, something like that. Again, let's turn this effect off and on. It's a very small shift, but I like what it's doing. I think that is everything I want to do on this shot. I really like how that looks. Maybe just a little bit of extra saturation. Ooh, a little bit less. +8. I think that's all we really need to do. Have I changed the yellows? There's a bit of yellow here, and I think I could maybe do with shifting these a bit. Yes, there we go. In the middle, like I'm looking at this rock here, it's looking a little bit off in comparison to kind of the other things that we've got. So just bringing those down a bit. Oh yeah, that's it. That's the last thing I wanted to do. And also just bringing the saturation down a little bit. Done. Happy with that. I could keep going forever, but I do need to find a point of doing. This video is all about quick edits. Hopefully these have been quick edits. Let's look at it before. Dark, everything is basically a shade of brown. It's very, very kind of miserable looking. We've brought back some gorgeous tones. We've kept this lovely pink, really cooled it off, given it a bit more of a cinematic edge. Very, very different to what we've done with this shot, where we've gone warm, we've gone bold. This one's a bit more of a moody sort of scene. But I really hope that that has given you some ideas of the tools that I would use for my work. If you have enjoyed this video, do please hit that like button. You could subscribe to the channel if you don't already. It will really help the channel, and I'll be doing plenty more videos like this. So hopefully that's a reason to stick around. But thank you so much for watching. That's it from me, and I will see you next time.